Hi everyone, today we're going to be going over section 1.3, which talks about midpoints and segment bisectors. So the midpoint of a line segment is really just the middle point. And the middle point or the midpoint is going to be equidistant from both endpoints. Equidistant just means equal distance. So let's say I have a segment and I can call this segment AB. The point right in the middle, let's call that C, that's going to be my midpoint. And it's equidistant from A and it's equidistant from B. So we can put in a little tick mark. And since they each have one tick mark, I know that from A to C is going to be the same distance from C to B. The next vocab word here we have is a segment bisector, and that is a point, a line, a ray, or a line segment that bisects another line segment. Bisector means to divide into two equal parts. So let's say I have a line segment. Again, we can still call this A and B. And let's say I have another segment going through here, and I can call this CD. CD is cutting AB in half. So CD is going to end up being the segment bisector. So I know from A to the middle is going to be the same distance from the middle point here to B. So bisector means to cut in half. We have two formulas here, and the difference is what's given to you. So if you have to find the midpoint on a number line, you're going to use this formula here. If you are finding the midpoint on a coordinate plane, so that's when you have points like 1, 4, and 3, 2, you have an X and you have a Y, you're going to use this formula. So as we go through the examples, we'll talk a little bit more about each formula. So example 1 here, ask us to find the coordinate of the midpoint given the number line. So there's our keyword. We're using a number line. So we're going to use that first formula, x1 plus x2 divided by 2. All right, I'm going to go ahead and work out the odds with you guys, and then I want you to pause the video and I want you to try the evens. So for number 1, we are looking at segment CE. So I see that C is right here at -4 and E is right here at 2. So following my formula, it says x1 plus x2, so I'm going to add -4 plus 2 and then divide by 2. When you are working out these problems, make sure you're looking at the numerator first, or the top line. So I have -4 plus 2, that gives me a -2. And then I'm going to divide by 2, and I have a final answer of -1. So that tells me if I go to -1 on my number line, which is right here, that is the direct middle between segment CE. We're going to go to number 3. So number 3 is looking at AF. So A is right here, F is right here. So A is in between -8 and -10, so that's going to be -9 plus F looks like it's at 3. So I'm going to add the top. That gives me a -6. Divide by 2, so my final answer is -3. Right, number 5, we're looking at segment AB. So A is at -9 here, plus B is right here, looks like it's at -7, divided by 2. The reason why I put parentheses around -7 is just to make sure I don't get confused with the plus and the negative. So if I add that, that's going to give me -16. in my numerator divided by 2. So my final answer is a -8. Right, number 7, so I'm looking at B and D. So B is at -7, D is at 0, divide by 2. I have -7 divided by 2, so my final answer is -3.5. So I want you to pause the video and I want you to try 2, 4, 6, and 8. Okay, hopefully you tried 2, 4, 6, and 8. I'm going to go over the answers right now. So number 2, you should have gotten 8 plus 0 divided by 2. Your final answer is 4. For number 4, you should have gotten 8 plus 2 divided by 2. So your final answer is 5. Number 6, 8 plus a -7 divided by 2. So your final answer, 1/2. And number 8, 2 plus 0 divided by 2 equals 1. Okay, we're going to skip number 2 for now, and we're going to go on to number 3. So number 3 has 3 examples. We are now trying to find the midpoint given the coordinates. So we have an x and a y. So this is the formula you should be using. x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So it's very similar to what we did in the previous example, but now we need to add our y's and divide by 2. So just to refresh your memory, when you have points, your first number is always your x, your second number is always your y. So I'm going to label this as x1, y1, and my second point is x2, y2. So let's go ahead and find the midpoint. I'm going to start with my x's. So I want to add -11 plus -19 and divide that by 2. So if I type that into my calculator, do the numerator first, that's going to give me -30 divided by 2, and that's going to give me -15. So that's my first number in my answer. Now we're going to add our y's. So 2 plus 6 divided by 2. That gives me 8 divided by 2, which gives me a final answer of 4. So the midpoint between K and L is going to be at -15.4. Let's go ahead and try number 2. So if it helps, you want to label x1, y1, x2, y2. So we're going to start by adding our x's. -12 plus 6 divided by 2. That's going to give us -6 divided by 2. So we get -3. Now we're going to add our y's. 8 plus 12 divided by 2. That gives me 20 divided by 2, which is 10. So those two numbers are part of my final answer. So -310. So I'm going to label number 3 for you, and I want you guys to try this. So pause the video, try it out, and then we will go over the answer. Okay, let's go over number 3. So we should have 11 plus -9 divided by 2, and that should have given you 1. For your y's, -2 plus 13 divided by 2, and that gives us 5.5. So our final answer is 1, 5.5. Now we're going to throw in a little bit of algebra. So it says, what is the measure of PR if Q is the midpoint of PR? So remember, midpoint means it's right in the middle. And that tells me that whatever this side is the same. So I can go ahead and label this as 6 minus 3x. Since Q is right in the middle, I know PQ is going to be the same as QR. So I know that this piece plus this piece is going to give me this entire piece. So PQ plus QR equals PR. And now we're going to substitute. So we're going to actually put the equations in. PQ is 6 minus 3x. QR is also 6 minus 3x. Equals PR, 14x plus 2. Now we're going to think back to algebra and we're going to combine like terms. So I have 6 and 6, so that's going to give me 12. Negative 3 and negative 3 gives me a negative 6x equals 14x plus 2. We're now going to try to solve for x. So we're trying to get x to one side. So I'm going to move the 6x over. So I have 12 equals 20x plus 2. And I want to subtract the 2. So I have 10 equals 20x. My last step is going to be to divide by 20 so I can get x by itself. And now I have x equals 1/2. So that is just the first part of this problem. We still haven't answered it fully. So the question is asking us, what is the measure of PR? So now that we found x, we're going to come back here and we're going to substitute 1/2 into the equation for PR. So we have PR is equal to 14 times 1/2, because we just figured that out, plus 2. So half of 14 is 7. Now we're going to add 2. So our final answer for PR is going to be 9 units. And that is the answer we want. So we had to start by finding x, and we plugged x in, or we substituted x in into PR. Example 5 is very, very similar to example 4. So we know that B is the midpoint. Remember, midpoint means the middle. So if this side is 2a minus 1, we know that this side will also be 2a minus 1. So we're going to start the same way. 2a minus 1 plus 2a minus 1 equals your entire thing, which is 3a plus 1. Now we're going to go ahead and combine like terms. So I have 2a plus 2a, that's going to give me 4a minus 2, because we have the negative ones, equals 3a plus 1. Now we're trying to move all the a's to one side and our constants to one side. So I will subtract 3a here, and I get 1a minus 2 equals 1. Add 2. My final answer is a is equal to 3. But remember, the question is asking us, what is the measure of AC? So AC is 3A plus 1. So now we need to substitute what we figured out for A. 3 times 3 plus 1. So I know AC is going to equal 10 units. So once you solve for the variable, make sure you plug it back in to whatever equation you need to. Examples 6 and 7 are going to be a little bit different because instead of finding the midpoint between one point to another point, we're going to find a specified distance. So for example, this one says find the point X on ST that is 1/5 of the distance from S to T. So there's a few ways we can start this. I want to look at where is S and where is T. And I want to think about what is the distance between S and T. So when we're on a number line, the easiest way is to count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we know that from S to T it is 10 units away. If we were finding the midpoint, we would just divide by 2 because midpoint means halfway mark. But now that we want to find 1/5 of the distance, we're not going to be dividing by 2. So I'm going to take 10 and I'm going to multiply it by 1/5. When you multiply by a fraction, it's the same idea as dividing. So I can think about what is 10 divided by 5. And that's going to give me 2. So starting at S, I want to just jump over 2 units. And I landed right here on -5. So I would say point X is on -5. Because I'm just looking for 1/5 of the total distance. So I'm not going all the way to the halfway mark. I'm just going 1/5. And we found out that 1/5 of 10 is 2. So think about just taking 2 steps from your starting point. And you ended up at -5. Example 7. Find the point Y on GH that is 2/3 of the distance from G to H. There are a couple different ways that you can go about solving this problem. So I'm going to explain this in 2 different ways and you can see which way makes more sense for you. Something that's super important is understanding where the start of your segment is and where the end of your segment is. So since it says G to H, we are starting at G and we are ending at H. We can use this 2/3 to help us. So starting at G, which is our starting point, I'm going to count over 2 and up 3 and put a point right there. I'm going to keep going. Go over 2, up 3, and another point right there. If I kept going, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, I end up at my ending point. So if you notice, by doing that, I have 3 pieces. When I'm looking for 2/3 of the distance, the bottom number is my overall parts or my overall sections. So I have 3 pieces on my segment. The top number tells me where I want to stop. So if I'm starting here, this is my first piece, this is my second piece, this is my third. So I want to stop at my second piece here. And that is where point Y is going to be. So that point is over 2 and up 1. So my answer would be that point Y is going to be at 2, 1. And that is 2/3 of the distance from G to H. So the second way we can look at this problem is first by starting out with the actual points. So G is at -2, -5, and H is at 4, 4. Remember, this is your X, this is your Y, this is your X, this is your Y. Okay, I'm going to start by finding the distance between my X's. There are a couple different ways you can find the distance. Sometimes I think it's easier if you saw a number line. So I drew out a number line. Let's say I'm starting at -2 and I'm ending at 4. I want to count the distance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's my x's. Now we're going to do the same thing with our y's. So let me draw in my number line here. So we're starting at -5 and we're counting to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now we're going to do the same kind of thing we did in example 6. So since the distance is 2/3, I'm going to multiply my 6 by 2/3. I'm going to multiply my 9 by 2/3. If you're using a calculator, make sure that you are putting parentheses around the 2/3. So if you do 6 times 2/3, that's going to give you 4. If you multiply 9 times 2/3, that's going to give you 6. So my last step is I'm going to start at my starting point, which was at G. So I'm going to work down here. So G started at -2, -5. I'm now going to take these numbers and I'm going to add them to my x and my y. So I'm adding 4 here and I'm adding 6 here. And that is where y is going to end up. So this is going to end up being 2 and this is going to end up being 1, which is the same answer we got the first way that I explained this problem.